we will just go ahead and move forward since we do have a quorum. So I do call the Joint Committee on Corrections and Juvenile Justice Oversight to order. And our first action will be approval of the minutes from November 28th through 30th, or 28th and 30th. I have a motion for that. I have a motion from Representative Owens. Do I have a second? I have a second from Representative Carlin. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Opposed? The minutes are approved. At this time, we will move to election of committee leadership. First up, we have, I will accept nominations for chairperson. Do I have a motion? Representative Smith.
I nominate Representative Stephen Owens for chairperson.
Do I have a second? Second there from Representative Heiberger. Do I have any other motions? Do I have any other motions? Do I have any other motions? Seeing none, we will close the nominations. All those in favor of Representative Stephen Owens as chairperson, please say aye. Opposed? We have a new chairperson by acclamation. I will now turn the meeting over to Chair Owens.
Certainly don't have to do that, but I can, we'll get this wrapped up here. Do I have any nominations for vice chairperson? Representative Russman. Senator Baumgartner has been nominated. Is there a second? Second, Representative Hoy. All in favor of, or are there any other nominations? All right. All in favor of Senator Baumgartner being the vice chairperson, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Let's have it. Senator Baumgartner is the vice chairperson for this year. Ranking minority member. Do I have a motion as it relates to ranking minority? Senator Corson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would nominate Representative Heiberger.
Representative Heiberger has been nominated. Is there a second? Representative Carlin. Very good. We have a motion and a second. Are there any other nominations? All right, seeing none. All in favor of Representative Heiberger being the ranking minority member, say aye. Opposed, no. All right. And he is a ranking minority member. We have elections out of the way. We have a few minutes here if we'd like to discuss possible interim study topics. I know this probably hasn't been top of mind for all of us to think about what we want to study here in 4, 5, 6, 7 months, but Senator Baumgartner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It actually has been top of mind.
Excellent.
My recommendation is that we spend the interim working through House Bill 2021. That was a bill that ran through the House. It came to the Senate. It had several days of hearings. It was amended by the Committee in Judiciary, and it did not pass in the Senate body of a whole. There was significant changes that occurred in conference committee. Most of those changes were never heard by the Senate or by the House. And considering the aspect that House Bill 2021 was really addressing 3 different groups of kids: SINC kids, kids that were already in corrections, the juvenile corrections program, as well as kids that might potentially commit crimes or get into trouble, so to speak. I think that was the term that came up. Also, I mean, I'm going to be quite honest. From the Senate side, my colleagues have been inundated by emails from KBC employees. In fact, we've seen the email that KBC leadership sent to their employees saying, ask the Senate to bring that bill back up for consideration. So we're talking about a contractor with our foster care system that is currently under a PIP because they're not meeting expectations to the agreement, but having employees reaching out to legislators on their vote. And so it's interesting because we're also in that RFP process for foster care for contractors. So are there problems within the system? There are. Are there things that really weren't addressed in the hearings? Absolutely. One of the things most notably that wasn't addressed, at least in our hearing, and I couldn't see that it was addressed in the House hearings, but the $20 million, there was a press release that came out from the governor, but that additional $20 million for services to keep families together and to reduce the number of kids in foster care that were committing crimes. So at no point in the hearings did even that additional funding come up. What's ironic is most of the groups that came and testified, at least on the Senate side, are folks that receive funding from that additional 20 million, like St. Francis Ministries, KVC, Kansas Children's Service League, and so forth. So I think TFI families as well that testified. So their ask was for more funding, and yet they never acknowledged the additional 20 million that was going to them. So I think it would be appropriate for us to really comb through, and perhaps when we're talking about the number of days, let's have 3 days. Let's have a day where we're talking about those kids that are in juvenile corrections. Let's require our corrections folks to bring real data because that wasn't ever provided in testimony. Let's talk about our sync kids and what's not working with the sync process. It was never mentioned what was and wasn't happening with the judiciary. And let's find out what some of those problems are. And then let's talk about what really can be done for kids. I think in the bill, it addresses kids that might commit crimes. But I think more appropriately, it should be kids that have high ACEs scores. And what could we do to address high ACEs scores? And what we could do from a community standpoint. And do we need one bill or do perhaps we need 3 bills to come out of so that we really, because from a Venn diagram, honestly, those shouldn't be intersecting. We should be able to address those 3. So, Mr. Chair, that would be my recommendation, that we give it the due diligence and make sure that the funding really goes where it needs to go, and that we could see what services are needed outside of that RFP process with DCF. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's a absolutely fantastic idea. Definitely worth the time and the effort to dig into those in depth. So thank you for bringing that up, Representative or Senator Corson.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't want to be repetitive, but for all the reasons that she stated, that Senator Baumgartner stated, that this idea would have my full support as well. I think we really need to look into 2021, I think, as it ended up, was incredibly problematic. And I think we need to look at all of the different areas that bill proposed to address in a more data-driven, evidence-based approach that I think we can create better outcomes for our kids. So this would have my full support.
Very good. Thank you. Further recommendations, committee. Representative Heiberger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to have us look at the offender registry again. I think the Judicial Council has done a lot of really good work on that, and I think almost everyone will acknowledge that our registry is bloated and needs some reform. So I'd like to keep that on our agenda.
Very good. Offender registries. Other topics, committee. Representative Hoy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, the last interim was my first on this committee, and it was really helpful to take a look at where the committee has been, what actions that we've moved out of here that we've been able to accomplish throughout our other committee work and on the floor in our chambers. And so I'm assuming we'll do a similar review and kind of take that up. And then also, I don't know how long a judicial council review, it's reasonable to think of how long that would take, but we did ask for that review of the state's stand your ground, self-defense and use of force laws. And so if that's something that's prepared, get an update on that and see if any action items are needed as a result of that review.
All right, very good. We wrote that down. Thank you very much. Further topics committee. The only one that I have that pops to mind, and I know I have a list somewhere that I just can't find right now, because I've been writing them down all year long, and then of course my list disappears. But you know, one of the things that I believe is still in the budget, it's kind of hard to track what's there or what's not at this point, but is money for therapeutic foster care homes. I believe there was 6 million, at least in the House version. The idea that, you know, we still have this issue of the courts pulling kids out of homes over simply behavior issues and not true need issues is something that I want to explore. And on top of that, I want to explore, you know, I know once upon a time we had the YRC2 beds that existed prior to 367. And I'm not saying that's the right model, but I want to explore other models that might exist in other states for those kids that, you know, don't necessarily fit in a true foster care setting, but then also may not work in that YRC2 setting. So just residential options for some of our youth, something I'd like to explore. Senator Baumgartner.
Mr. Chair, I would certainly support that because it really does dovetail to what I spoke to. Foster care starts with the judiciary and ends with the judiciary. And when we have more than 50% of kids, at least in this county that we're sitting in right now, in Shawnee County, that are going into foster care, and yet DCF has never been contacted in any way that this is a child or a family with any types of problems, we know that what's happening is exactly what you're speaking to. I would want us to make an addition. Many of those kids in years past have been in JAG-K programs.
Mhm.
And the interesting thing is where we're seeing spikes of kids being placed in foster homes for behavior. Not what we would think of as typical foster care needs, but for acting out behavior. The school district, the Topeka School District, as well as the Wichita School District, have both reduced their JAG-K programs in Wichita significantly. And it's not due to lack of funding. It's not due to any action by DCF. It is the school districts that have made that decision. And I think if we were to look at the data as JAG-K is declining as far as the number of programs, the placements into foster care for behavior that would typically not be a foster placement is increasing. And so I would want us to include the folks from JAG-K because I see a direct correlation, at least from what I'm hearing from those different areas. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I think it'd be good for many of our newer members, maybe to even get to learn more about JAG-K, what they do, how they operate. I know we celebrate them every year, but I don't think everybody really understands just what an effective program that is for our kids. So very good. Appreciate that. Representative Hoffman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, this in the budget this year, we put in some extra money for the community or corrections to work on different buildings or structures. I'd like to see them come in with some sort of a master plan of all their different correction facilities, what their plan is to do some upgrades in the different ones, and so that we can take a look at that.
Yep. Sounds good. We have that one written down as well. Additional suggestions committee. I'm not seeing any currently. I would encourage you guys, as these topics are front of mind or pop into your heads, just feel free to shoot me an email. You know, Normally, I think we meet October, November, something along those lines. But as we get closer, we'll coordinate a time. But I welcome your topics and your input. It's really a great opportunity for us to study the things that help drive decisions here. So is there anything else that needs to become before the committee? All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and adjourn this meeting and wish everyone a fantastic day.